Welcome to the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. I'm Coach Lisa Callahan, a recovered emotional eater. I ended decades of self-inflicted struggles with food through taking a journey of self-discovery, which revealed the secrets of what was going on underneath the food. Throughout this podcast, we'll explore topics that are rarely talked about, like low self-esteem, lack of confidence, people-pleasing, and decades of self-sabotaging behaviors. Rather than just focusing on the food, we'll dive deeper into aspects of who you are as a person and how you ended up relying on food for comfort to begin with. My mission is simple: to empower women to regain their confidence and prioritize self-love, regardless of the number on the scale. Discover what you've really been craving, and trust me, it's not about the food. This podcast is based on insights shared from the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group on Facebook, so be sure to check out the show notes for the link to the group and a complimentary gift just for you. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Hey, welcome to another fun and insightful episode of the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. The topic today is 3 mistakes that you might be making when you're thinking about your eating habits. Now, as we dive into this episode, I want to teach you something unique about how I think about eating habits and what I teach my students in Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System. And if you don't already know what Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System is, it's an online coaching community where I help women who are struggling with emotional eating identify their invisible emotional relationship with food through taking a journey of self-discovery. So when we work with our students, what we want to do is look for a new perspective because we want to make new discoveries. Let's face it, if I teach you the same old thing that you've done in the past and that you've been learning over and over and over again, it's not going to help you. And if you knew how to fix this and the things that you were using over and over again were working for you, well, then you'd have fixed it already and you wouldn't be sitting here listening to a podcast about how to crush your cravings, right? So I struggled with emotional eating for 30 years and I'm now recovered. And so are hundreds of my clients. So I know with 100% certainty that emotional eating is fixable. So I want to give you the absolute best options to change your mindset with things that aren't working for you, since honestly, it's not that much fun staying stuck. So as we start this new episode and we go over these 3 mistakes that you might be making when you're thinking about your eating habits, I want to make sure that you know 2 things right off the hop. Number 1, we're not going to be talking about food, because food is not the actual problem. The habits of what you're choosing to put into your mouth are simply decisions that were created through repetition. That's what a habit is. A habit is something that you choose to do, and then it becomes repetitive. And as it becomes repetitive, it becomes a habit. So if you're putting foods into your mouth over and over and then blaming the food and telling yourself that the food is the problem, well, you're going to have to widen your perspective to see why these habits were created to begin with. Because once upon a time, they were created for a reason. And then through repetition, they became habits. And if we don't think about it this way, you're going to continue to stay stuck, ignoring the root cause and the reason why these habits were created to begin with. And you're just going to keep blaming the food, which will never work. So we got to get to what's underneath the food, plain and simple, period. All right, number 2. In this episode, we're also not going to be talking about good or bad habits. So this is super duper important, since now that we know that habits were created through repetition, it's only fair to say that once upon a time, when whatever this habit was with your eating habits was created, that specific thing that you were choosing to do, it worked really, really well for you. That's why you chose it to begin with. It's just that the same habit that might have protected you before, kept you safe, made you comfortable, made you feel good about yourself, it doesn't matter what it is or why it was created. It's just that that habit is no longer working for you anymore. And so we can't blame the habit or call the habit good or bad, because as you may have already learned in other episodes, blame is a protection that's used to keep you stuck. And I'm assuming that you don't want to stay stuck. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to show you how to stop making these common mistakes. And when you're thinking about your eating habits, we want to gain a new perspective instead. We have to be able to incorporate a new way of thinking because, again, if the old way was working for you, then you had to fix this already. That's it. Oh, and by the way, if you haven't heard all of the episodes of this podcast yet, may I suggest that you go back to the beginning and you check them all out? They're all valuable in giving you simple and actionable nuggets of information about how to heal emotional eating habits for good. Okay, let's dive into the 3 mistakes that you might be making when you're thinking about your eating habits. Mistake number 1, you tell yourself that you're eating reactively. This is such a damaging mistake because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Hearing yourself tell yourself that you're eating reactively means that you're going to have to create a whole bunch of things to react to just so that you can get to the food, which basically means that you're going to be strengthening and highlighting the things that cause you to feel like the most narrow-minded version of yourself or the weakest-minded version of yourself. So you're going to have to actually create scenarios that make that weakened version of you stronger. So then you can eat reactively. So when you're in this narrow space, basically it means that whenever something happens, that you immediately react in a way that triggers you into negative thinking. Then, since your solution to the problem of that negative thinking that you just got triggered into is to go eat to calm yourself down, you'll have to constantly be looking for things that bug you, things that tick you off, just so that you can get to the food. That doesn't seem like a great idea to me. So while you might be telling yourself that you have to use food to calm you down, you're also ignoring the big elephant in the room, which is why are you so activated by things that are happening outside of yourself to begin with? Can you see how counterproductive this is? So instead, I'd like to teach you how to become proactive instead of reactive. And this means that you'll be able to see the whole perspective instead of just the part that's activating you, that's ticking you off. So in Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System, we teach you how to utilize something called the silent space, which is where you can give yourself a moment to pause before you respond to anything, period. So typically your first response to anything is going to be like the activating one that's coming from the triggered part of you. And so it'll be super important to stay ahead of this proactively by reminding yourself to take a pause and a breath before you launch into a bag of chips or rip open a Hershey bar wrapper. There's an author, his name is Viktor Frankl. You can look him up. And he explains in his book, one of his books, I suppose, The Man's Search for Meaning, he says between stimulus and response, there is a space. And it is in that space that is our power to choose our response. In our response lies growth and freedom. So this is why you're going to want to learn to become proactive instead of reactive and stop telling yourself that you're eating reactively because that will keep you stuck forever. Because remember, you're going to get more of what you focus on. So if you tell yourself that you're eating reactively, which sends your alert system that you have to go look out for something to be reactive of, which puts you into an error mindset, and then you don't take that pause, game over, my friend. And that is a tough place to be. So let's dive into mistake number 2. Mistake number 2 is that you tell yourself that you're out of control with your eating habits. And this basically means that you're telling yourself, I just have to get control of myself. This ends up being backwards also, because you're starting from a place where the solution is that you have to get control of yourself. But the only reason why anybody in their right mind would want to get control of themselves is if you feel like you're out of control to begin with. So your solution is to get into control, which means that you actually have to start off out of control, or you won't ever get to your goal, right? So you have to make certain that you think about things from a wider lens, because this particular one, it's maddening, because people say it like it's, rolling off their tongue. They're like, well, I'm just so out of control. I have to get control of myself. Okay, well, hang on a minute. If you're using food to calm yourself down and you're telling yourself that that's control, but then in order to get to that food, you have to be out of control, like that doesn't make any sense. So when you work with a mindset coach and you work with us in Crush That Food Thing Self-Discovery System, we teach you how to utilize the word control in a totally different way. First, I ask my students to write down the word control and then the word freedom, one on top of the other. Then I ask you to draw a line down the middle of the page. And then on the other side, I ask you to write the word love, and then underneath that, the word fear. So if you want to do this right now, be my guest, go grab a pen and paper. You can pause me for a second and write down control and freedom, and then love and fear. And you tell me which words match. Does control match with love or fear? Does freedom match with love or fear? I'm going to say that about 100% of the people that I've ever spoken with, self included, will tell me that it's a no-brainer, that control matches with fear and freedom matches with love. So anytime that you're telling yourself you're out of control and that you just want to get control of yourself, you are ordering a big dose of fear. And I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem like a really great idea. That seems extremely counterproductive. So instead, what I'd like to suggest is that you stop telling yourself that you're out of control and that you focus on giving yourself personal freedom, and that the freedom that you're focusing on is choosing to be kind to yourself. Because think about how unkind it is to tell yourself that you're out of control, which makes you feel awful, then tell yourself that you have to have food to calm yourself down. But then when you're using the food to calm yourself down, it ends up being this whole thing where then that doesn't feel calming to you. That actually feels horrible to you later in the aftermath, right? And so it's like you're skipping the part where you're literally stabbing yourself in your own back. And if you're not recognizing that with awareness, then that's something that we're going to want to talk about immediately. Because honestly, if you're stabbing yourself in your own back, then that's a form of self-abuse. And if you're convincing yourself to have a fear-based goal, you're probably going to want to rethink this one. All right. So last but not least, this is another huge mistake if you're telling yourself this. If you're telling yourself that you're being led by cravings that are coming from your mouth, this is one that I used to use all the time. I would literally tell myself that I was craving something sweet or salty, or like that I was craving Taco Bell or ice cream or pizza. But I basically omitted myself from any responsibility of what I was choosing to put into my mouth, since I was just blaming my mouth for making these choices for me. This was so false. And it's downright silly when you really think about it, because my mouth can't choose anything on its own. Like, it doesn't have the physical manpower to just go and like scoop up food. And it actually doesn't have like the ability to do that part of the process. Like, I actually have to like go get the food and like put it in my hand and like lift my hand to my mouth. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm telling myself that like, oh, my mouth just wanted Taco Bell, or like I was just craving this, it's like, I could taste it in my mouth. Well, telling yourself you're being just led by cravings and you're just like a helpless victim to this situation is ridiculous. It's something that you're really going to want to think about with a true and utter perspective, because again, the food doesn't just fall into your mouth, you're putting it there, right? And so if you continue to tell yourself that you're just being led by cravings and you're like, what am I supposed to do about it? Well, then that's going to be really false information for your mindset. Now, I know that if you're eating sugar in a regular routine in your day-to-day life, I know that you will have some physical cravings for sugar. That part I get. But I'm sure that you've been on a sugar detox or some kind of a cleanse or whatever, and that you just stopped eating sugar, right? Well, you recognize with awareness that the sugar physical craving went away in like 5 days, right? And then you might say to me, but Lisa, hold on now. That's the problem. I started to crave sugar again. Not true. It's just not true. It's false information. Because you're not going to start craving the sugar again until you actually put the sugar in your mouth. Then you'll get the physical craving again. Like you would actually have to force yourself to eat sugar again, and then it becomes your craving. And the reason why you would be doing that, because the physical craving, that's not happening. After you're done with the couple of days or whatever, and you're sort of off of it, the physical craving's not coming back, like not strong anyways. Plus, just so you know, from years of experience, because I've fixed this problem myself and I'm a recovered emotional eater, I used to have this problem. I know for a fact that if you fix this problem from the roots, that you can eat some sugar. I eat sugar. I eat carrot cake. I love carrot cake. I love cheesecake. I love cookies. Like I eat sugar. I eat chips sometimes. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal if there's going to be a part of you that's going to lead you towards a binge. That's different. And so I know for a fact that it's not just a physical addiction, that your mouth is not just craving this stuff, period. So if I could just help your mindset steer you in the direction and steer your attention towards the feeling that you're having after you eat too much food, and focus less on the actual food itself, that would be really, really helpful, because that would give you an opportunity to really see what you might be emotionally craving in the process. So the question to ask yourself is, what could you possibly be craving that makes you want to eat so much sugar and fat and garbage and crap that later on you're going to feel pretty awful? So all you have to do to figure this out is you just have to look at your results. Like, what are the results that you're getting after you emotionally eat or overeat or stress eat or whatever it is? What are you subconsciously craving? What feeling? So do this. Take a piece of paper and ask yourself this question. What is the feeling that I'm getting after I feel like I'm eating the foods that I was craving? And now keep in mind that I'm not talking about like the immediate after. I'm not talking about the sugar high. I'm not talking about the immediate experience of relief due to this dopamine ecstasy. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about later on. I'm talking about the next day, possibly when you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, shoot. And you're disappointed, or you're embarrassed, or you're guilty, or you feel shameful. You feel sadness, anger, regret, judgment, blame, whatever it is. Only you know what that feeling is for you. Only you know what feeling comes up over and over again. So in self-discovery, we call these cravings, we call them subconscious intentions. And these intentions can only be discovered through the results that you're getting that are mismatched from what you say you want. Like maybe you go in and you're like, oh, I'm craving ice cream. I need ice cream. So you eat ice cream. And then the next day you feel just horrible. You feel disgusting. You feel ashamed of yourself. You feel disappointed in yourself. You feel regretful. Like, so now we can see like you got a result that was mismatched from just like, oh, I want ice cream, right? Got a result that was different. the result is what's going to show your subconscious intention. So again, it's certainly easy to blame sugar. And at some point, though, you're going to have to take ownership of the part of the problem that doesn't have anything to do with food. And you're going to have to be willing to admit that there could be something happening below the level of your conscious awareness. And that's the reason why we call these subconscious cravings subconscious. They're coming from below the level of your conscious awareness. Sub means below, right? And so now that this might be making you like think for a second, you might be a little squirmy. You might be like, I don't want to bring these subconscious intentions to the spotlight, right? And you might be thinking to yourself, I'm going there, Lisa. I'm not interested in what my subconscious intentions are. I kind of like it that way. I like that I'm like hiding out here. I like that there's like one part of me that I show in public and one part of me that I show in private. I like that. And that's okay. But that's your subconscious intentions talking, because your subconscious intentions are sneaky and they like to live in the darkness. They like to feel scared and confused and confined and contaminated. They like to feel that. But that's not the life that I want for you. And I really hope that that's not the life that you want for yourself either. Now, you might be wondering, why the heck would I be craving disappointment or embarrassment or guilt or sadness or shame or blame or judgment or whatever? Like, why? Why, Lisa? Why? And that, my friend, is a question that we can only get to through coaching. Because the answer is not obvious. And if it was obvious, you would have figured it out already. And if you like hone in on it, you'll have to actually do some work, because once you figure out what the actual subconscious craving is, well, then A, you have to heal that craving. B, there might be forgiveness that comes along with that. Maybe forgiveness from another person or forgiveness for yourself. And C, you'll also have to be willing and capable of recognizing how to back yourself out of the habits. Because remember, habits were created through repetition, and consequently, they're changed through repetition too. So once you figure out what your subconscious intention is, that might be a huge breakthrough for you. Like, you might be on the other end of this podcast and you might be going, oh my gosh, I'm craving disappointment because it's something that happened when I was 6 years old, whatever. That makes sense, Lisa. But then you have to actually do the work to back yourself out of the habits, because again, they were created quite well, actually, for that past version of yourself. They're just not working for yourself today. So the same thing that worked for you in the past is just not working for you today. So even if you don't want to reach out to me or work with me and my Crush Everything Self-Discovery System team, that's totally fine. Don't wait on this though. Go get some professional help. Like, go do something about it, because you don't want to live this way. You deserve to live an extraordinary life. You deserve a life where food does not invade every thought 24/7. I didn't know this was possible for me, but now that I do, and I share everything that I'm teaching you here in my systems, in my programs, but we give you coaching as well. Like, I've helped hundreds of women who didn't think they were ever going to be able to change. Some of them were in hard resistance. Some of them ghosted me for like months. But once you start to catch a glimpse of your own power, and once you recognize that you might have self-doubt in your head, chances are someone else put it there. And anybody can put self-doubt in your head, but you're the only one that can accept it. So if you got self-doubt that's streaming into your head from when you were 10, but you're 60 or you're 50 or 40, 70, whatever, now it's on you. And so you've got to take ownership of this, period. So here's what you're going to do. Remember when I said earlier to write down the feeling that you are experiencing after you eat? So I want you to ask yourself when you've experienced this feeling before. Like, think of a time where you felt disappointed or sad or ashamed or guilty or regretful. You get my gist, right? And then you can start to explore the roots of that feeling so that you can fix it from the core. And again, this is what we do in our self-discovery system. And this process is something that I call maturing frozen emotions, which you'll only find in my teachings because I'm the one that created that one. So it's super fun. And I promise that once you get to the root of your subconscious cravings, all the cravings for the junk food would disappear. And what you'll end up having to do then is you'll end up having to change the physical response. But you can't change the physical response first because that just will never work. You have to be able to heal this from the inside out first. Then you can change the habits. So think about if there is any time that you have something happening and you're just like, Lisa, I'm so overwhelmed with my life. There's so many things happening. And the only thing, I can't get through a day without ripping open a bag of M&Ms, period. Like, you're going to want to put new thoughts in your head that are more purposeful and crowd out the ones that are meant to keep you stuck. So if there's only one thing that you do in this training, it's just like, stop telling yourself these 3 things that we just talked about, because those are mistakes. Stop telling yourself that you are out of control. Stop telling yourself that you're eating reactively, right? Stop telling yourself that you're just craving this stuff and it's just coming from your mouth and you have to fill it. You don't. Just stop telling yourself that, and that will help take you to the next step. All right. So this was a really fun training today, and there is a full episode of this. I only gave you 3 on this podcast because just wanted to keep the timing what I wanted at. But in the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group, which is my free Facebook community, I have 7 mistakes in there. So you can actually go in and watch the full episode. It's right there. I have put the link right here in the show notes. So hop on over to the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group and go check out the 7 mistakes that I made, or 7 mistakes that you can make while thinking about your eating habits. So the other thing that I got in the show notes this week that I have there is we have a free masterclass coming up on August 22nd. It's at 3 p.m. Eastern. It's called The 3 Secrets That I Use to Conquer Stress Eating, Beat Self-Sabotage, and Kick the All or Nothing Mindset Around Food. You can grab the registration link in the show notes, and we'll make sure that we get you into that if you sign up. It's at 3 p.m. Eastern, so if you can't make it to that, totally fine. As long as you're registered, you're gonna get the replay. And as always, if you're looking for a bite-sized opportunity to explore self-discovery, and you just want to figure out, like, what am I all about? And you want kind of a safe place to do it because you don't want the obligation and you don't want to, maybe have to engage with, coaching or anything like that, then might I recommend that you get the Mindset Makeover. It's a really great way to get started on your self-discovery journey. And that is in the show notes too. All right. And last but not least, if you want to chat with me, I am always available. My door is always open. I love being here with you guys. And I would really appreciate it if you would like, follow, or subscribe to this episode, and make sure you share it with at least 3 people because we want to keep getting the words out there. And if you want to talk to me privately, you can always send me a message at lisa@coachlisacallahan.com. And I will see you in the next training. Bye for now. All right, my beautiful friend, that brings us to the end of another episode from the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening today and took something from our conversation that you are going to put into immediate action. I love spending time with you and would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with at least one friend today who you think might be struggling too. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any other amazing topics. And please, please do leave me a review. It would mean the world to me. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.